Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform for alumni to get together with their various affinity groups, whether it's college alumni, whether it's business alumni associations, fraternal organizations, or athletes. We have a place where they can network and connect. And one thing that we're really trying to do is provide different types of workshops and shows and learning experiences for people. And Athletes and Entrepreneurs is set to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. It is a major problem today, and we're trying to address that. And we interview former athletes and kind of they take us through their journey. We're so excited today to have Jim Cederna. How you doing, Jim?
Good, Rob. Thank you.
That's a good deal. So Jim is a former college football player. He played at Central Michigan, and then he went into the business world, kind of went up the ranks of management, ultimately becoming a leading CEO with multiple companies. And then now he's the founder and CEO of his own company, Cederna International. So Jim, we've talked a little bit offline a lot, but the first thing I was asking, tell people about growing up playing sports, like kind of from kid to high school, and how that shaped you ultimately.
Well, first of all, Rob, thank you for involving me. And I hope my story of coming from small-time football to big-time business can be lessons learned for others. And
Absolutely.
so I hope I can provide some help there. So I come from very northern Michigan, from a very small town. We didn't have many sports because we didn't have baseball teams because the school was done in the spring before the snow was melted and all those kinds of things. So football was the sport in our town. And you were a rock star if you were a successful football player. My father had done very well, loved the sport, and there was no question I was going to play football. And didn't have a lot of other choices anyway. So that's where it began. And I was successful enough to get scholarship to play at Central Michigan and played at that level also.
That's great. And it's, the one thing that people realize, and as athletes, there's so much preparation and practice, and especially when you're starting in youth sports. I mean, myself, I played a lot of sports, different sports, but ultimately I was a runner in high school and then a little bit in college before I got hurt. So one thing I always like to ask people too is, did you have a dream as a kid of being a professional athlete? And if so, what sport?
Oh, for sure. And I dreamed of being a Packer. Where I grew up wasn't far from Green Bay, and they were, as everybody knows, they're still owned by their shareholders, so they're much more part of the community and whatnot. So that was for sure the dream. And the other dream was that our high school team, a small school, would win the state championship. Those were the dreams that we all hoped for. Didn't know whether we'd ever get there, but we hoped for them.
That's great. And, I tell people that, I wanted to be a professional athlete too. I want to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, the talent wasn't there. So now I'm doing this. So let's kind of move forward to college. So, one of the things we talk about now a lot is that ultimately with the transition out of sports, it's becoming a big challenge. And whether it's out of from the college level or professional level, I guess back when you were in school, and both of us, it was a while ago when we were in school, but when you're in school or people that you're associated with now, were there programs to work with the athletes aside from just the one type meeting where they talked about their futures after sports?
If there were, I don't remember them.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anything like that. Everybody played. The focus was on that. My own experience was made it through the senior season, and I really enjoyed college very much, and did okay in the classroom too. So it was a good experience for me. And then I realized when I went to the last semester, so now I had one to go and I was going to graduate, and it hit me that I'm going to have to do something.
Yeah.
Life to earn an income, and it's even though it was a stretch dream, it's not going to come from professional sports. So what do I do? So made that transition, but was actually fairly lucky. I can give a few tips too of how I think I got some breaks, but wasn't prepared for that. It was a major change.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think it still probably resonates today. I think there might be a little more help today than back then when we went to school, but still, that's something that we're trying to work with, is that we see opportunities to kind of go into these athletic departments and roll up the sleeves and find ways to help the athletes, not only the current athletes, but the alumni athletes as well. I mean, obviously there are issues with mental health challenges and financial literacy and all that. So, hopefully we'll see more schools doing that. I mean, schools are, I think, trying, but they might just not have the bandwidth to do it. One of the other areas too, and obviously with Alumni Direct, we kind of focus a lot on alumni, engaging with alumni. Back when you were in school, and then it will be a two-part question, then maybe kind of what you see today. Did alumni seem to get involved? And I don't mean from, everybody has different stories about alumni getting involved financially. We'll put that was today's modern NIL, I guess. But did the athletes come back to the school to talk to the other athletes? And I don't mean just like golf tournaments, I mean more about like actually working and helping athletes there.
Very little. I did that myself after I graduated and had a job for a few years, but it wasn't really the focus. That I think, but the program that you're doing now is great because it addresses something that has gone on for a long, long time, where it's not had the attention that it needed. The company that I ended up joining was headquartered only 30 miles away. It began my journey. And how it happened was so simple: networking, right? That my first coaching tip to anybody who's in a position where you need to start making income for a living and it's not going to be sports, your network comes in handy. And it was someone, I was in the science departments and took those kinds of courses, and it was someone that lived in the same dormitory that we all lived in. He led the class, the best grades and whatnot, and he had graduated a year ahead of us, went to work for them, and literally called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, if you don't have a plan of what you're going to do, I can get you an interview over here." And so it was, and then he explained to me his own experience. He had been there less than a year, but he explained to me his own experience in joining the company. And that was pure luck, as I would look at it. But the value of networking, we don't really take advantage sometime of all the people that we know. That would be one of my coaching tips to the athletes that are looking for places to go.
Yeah, and I think that's key, because I've talked to some agents, and then also like even some coaches, and they just say the best time to network and connect is when you're still playing, because a lot of times it seems that maybe especially at the professional level, where you've had this whole career, you're not really focusing on networking, and then all of a sudden it's done, and then you kind of expect to maybe for things to be handed to you, and then all of a sudden you have the realization that's not the case. So that's a great tip, and that's something I think it's probably something that we have to start even maybe even at the high school level, is just to kind of teach these kids the importance of that. I mean, it could be, whether it's the coaches or whether it's, parents or relatives or friends, but just, utilize that network to help out. So the big topic today, everybody talks about NIL, name, image, likeness. Kind of give me your thoughts on that.
So I'm going to tell a story to kind of start with that biases my whole background, but I think others may have at least a way to learn from this. So the town that I grew up in, I said that our goal was football, and our goal as a small school was to win the state championship. And so we were in a mining community. So I grew up in a family, and most people did, that didn't have a lot of money and that sort of thing. But what I experienced at the time I was in high school, the mines were going under. And the problem was that the reserves of ore were getting so deep in the ground, they couldn't afford to mine them any longer. It wasn't the fault of the miners or anybody else. And the community had nothing else. And I literally experienced how things happen to communities when businesses fail. And I learned how important it was for businesses to be successful, because that's the only way people are going to make an income. People rely on the companies that way. So sorry, this is a bit of a long story, but it'll give you.
No worries. I'm interested.
Where I came from. So my own family, my father was getting older, and fortunately for him, he was early retired. So it didn't in the end hurt our family financially, because had he not gotten some help in retirement, the family couldn't have sustained. So the first thing I learned is how important it is that you have an income stream that you can rely upon. And the other coaching tip I'd give to people is, when in doubt, go to a big established company first. You may not make it, but the odds of the company making it are great.
Yeah.
Don't go someplace where, yeah, you might make it, but the company might not, because you need that income. And the second thing that I learned in that time frame, because I saw what happened in our community, and what the worst part for our football team was, there was another high school only a few miles away in the next village, and we were arch rivals. And in my senior year, we had to merge with them as one team, because we had to go to one high school, all because businesses didn't succeed. So fast forward, now you can see why I coach CEOs and business owners and presidents and leaders on how important it is that they do a good job so their companies are successful. So NIL, you asked me that question, I'm back to that. If that gives people a way to get some income in the short run and they don't blow it all, and it gives them some reserve to work off of, God bless them. If they are old enough and mature enough or smart enough to get coaching advice or something from somebody so they put it to good use, great. But as soon as you're done with your education and you go to work for a living, your goal is one in my mind, and that is to get to your day of financial freedom. And that is the day at which your pile of money and assets is big enough that you could stop working at that point, but it's certainly not then.
Right.
And if you're not going to get into professional sports and get a whole bunch of money again, then you're working towards that right from the start.
Yeah, and you hit on it with NIL, I think, is that, and this is with all young people, I always say this, but there's that whole financial literacy component, is that all of a sudden some of these guys are getting this windfall of money, and they're just, whether it's maturity, you're just not having that understanding of kind of what to do with it. And then, you know, by the way, you got to pay taxes, and that's like one side. And I think it's great that they are having the opportunity, like you're saying, to get paid. I think the other thing that I've heard, and maybe just give me some quick thoughts, is some of these athletes are saying they feel like it's breaking up the team a little bit, in a sense, like they're like some of these athletes that are focusing more on the NIL part of it than concerned about why they're there, like, you know, playing that sport and playing as a team. I mean, do you see that as a distraction at all?
Well, I think there's a lot of downside to it too. Of course, it's not a particularly well-managed program. You know, it's there's haves and have-nots in that become pretty extreme at an age where it's hard to manage all that and that sort of thing. So again, it's happened. I hope that we learn from it and learn to make it manage it better in the future. You know, the whole portal program now is such a dynamic, so different than we've dealt with before. I hope that it won't take too many years to learn and get it settled down to the point where it works better, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's fast forward, and we talk about the transition. So, you know, we talked a little bit offline. You kind of alluded to it. Fortunately for yourself, it wasn't as difficult. But talk a little bit about once you're, you know, you spent all these years like practicing and playing, and there's a little rocky for everybody. Forgot to turn that sound off. So anyway, talk about that transition out of the sport, and we're going to get more into detail because we want to talk about all the leadership details on that. But just your immediate transition out of the sport.
So I graduated, and literally I didn't know any better. I didn't take a break. The day I graduated, I went to work for this new company, and I had an employment contract and all that. And so I was now in the business world. I believe now, looking back in hindsight, I had enormous advantages over other people that were hired in, new hires, who hadn't played sports or played it as aggressively or dedicated as I had. I think there's so many things that you learn that make you a better employee. And this company that I joined, Dow Chemical Company was the name of them. They're the largest chemical company in the world. They believe in athletes, that they are good employees. And it's not just for the good of trying to help athletics. They believe their company will be better with athletes. And the company itself is number one in the world for the amount of intramural sports that they have inside the company once you join them and that sort of thing. So it
Oh, that's
brings a lot of athletes there and they stay happy and all that. So yeah, I just think it was joining the right kind of company, and I had a lot of advantages that was much later that I didn't realize I had. And I had a few downfalls too of things that you don't learn. So if you'd like me to carry on, I'll carry on a little further with examples.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I think people need to realize, and like I said, I think transition out of sports, it could be very difficult. But we want to, let people know there is a brighter side to it, and just kind of getting into that mindset of how they can utilize their skills. And that's kind of what you're talking about here, is just utilizing that athlete skill set that's attractive to employers.
So the first one that you know, but you don't know it until you've played a sport. And this is why I consider football number one. Others would argue for their sport, and they could probably have equal argument, but it's teamwork.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to be a sole proprietor, sole employee, and working entirely on your own, which can happen, but is pretty unusual, you're going to have to work as a team. And you can't play sports without being a team. There's football puts the most players on the field at the same time, and they have offense and defense, so they've got even more players. And so you've got to deal with all the dynamics of a fairly large group of people, young men or women in this day, that have to learn how to play as a team. And in business, it's the same thing. It's one of the first things I coach when I get together with CEOs and business owners and they want to improve their companies or they've got an issue. I first talk to them about what's the teamwork in your organization like and what's it like at the top on the way down. So that's number one. Number two, you've been exposed in most cases to some people who have been better leaders than average. Head football coaches don't get there by chance. Right. And they've got to be able to lead young players and young people and be highly organized. That's another thing you learn, organize. You don't miss a practice. The whole entire year has a schedule to it. You're running all the time. You're either getting in conditioning for the next season or you're having spring or workouts or whatever you're doing. You learn, and you're never going to miss a flight. You're going to be on time for practices. You just organized and you're used to it. And it's something you have a good advantage in, just knowing how to organize your own life.
Yeah.
So those are just a few examples that I think athletes don't realize they have such an advantage, and it makes it so much easier for them to get into business. And then the next one is the grind. Particularly if you get to the college level, unless you had phenomenal skills, you're going to work hard.
Yeah.
And you're going to put a lot of effort into it. And you get into the business setting then, and if you want to be successful, you need to be prepared to work hard. So that's another one that you learn when you get to that level. Without it, it's pretty hard to be successful. So you don't mind the grind. And then the next one is competition.
Yeah.
One of the most humbling and yet most maturing things that happens to athletes. Football, again, they've got lots of spare guys on the second team and the third team that want to be on the field when you're out there. And there was nothing more frustrating to me than to have to come off the field for a play. I worked so hard, I wanted to be on that field. I played defense, so whenever we were on defense, I wanted to be on that field. And you learn how to compete in a constructive way, and you learn how to put up with the ups and downs. I got injured once and had to miss a couple of games and then work my way back onto the field. Great experience for business or anything else. You have all that most other people haven't experienced. And we haven't talked about all the women and females who play sports. I think for them, because there's not as many playing sports as a percent of the total yet, I think we're getting there fast. But when I coach now with these senior level people, these leaders in these companies, and there's women on the team, if they played sports, you can just tell. You can just tell because they've got all these things. They know how to play team. They know how to compete in a constructive way. They know what to do at the proper times, and they just have a polish to them that you don't get if you don't have that background from the beginning.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I mean, those are all great points. And I think, as people hopefully are listening back to this and just hearing that, because it gives them hope. What should be kind of the mindset? I mean, they've got all the skills and all that, but to think about the different plans. I mean, you obviously had that, you knew what your next level is, but for some of these athletes that are kind of identifying themselves as whatever their sport is, what kind of advice can you give them to kind of open up their mind to look at the plan B, the plan C, the plan D?
Well, just look at the numbers first. The number of people who've played at the university level that are then going to go on and make enough income to get to that point of financial freedom. Again, I keep stressing that all the leaders that I coach in these corporations, they make pretty good money. Some of them have some pretty lavish spending styles too. But I say to them, your world changes the day you have enough money to choose what you're going to do next. And until you have that enough money to make that choice, then you got to keep doing what makes you money.
Right. So just finding the right things out there that you like to do. And I mean, one thing I talk about a little bit is there's a guy I met, and he's more, it's a little bit different, but on the high school level, they're trying to work with like freshman, sophomore, hopefully in the start of it, but to help them and their parents pick the right school for them. And so, everybody wants to play football at, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida, Georgia, whatever, but to find the school where it's not just about the sport, but it's also about the other things, the academics and the social life and all that, and taking more of that holistic approach. So I think that's kind of pushing that back now to the college level, is hopefully, teaching, inspiring these athletes to kind of have that mindset, is that just, you have to focus obviously on your sport, you're there playing it, the scholarships, whatever, but look at those other things and to some of the things you were just talking about.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and again, just another one that such a learning experience for athletes. It's the coach. And sometimes the coaches can change while you're there, but assuming you get in with the right ones, most of these coaches have very strong values and beliefs, which are really good things to learn from. And you see them at play every day, and you learn how important it is to have those values. So
and I guess that's kind of make or break if for those fortunate to have good coaching. I'm sure there's other coaches out there that aren't as good, and I guess that kind of hinders people. So walk us through a little bit. So now you've come out and you're into the business world, into various management positions. Kind of talk about that journey to being a CEO and having success there.
Great question. And thank you for asking that, because then the next step comes. So now you're an athlete, worrying about getting a job, you get in and you worry about how you're going to learn. Relax. Once you get in, they're going to coach you. They're going to help you. It starts at the lower levels. They have people who in the larger firms, they have people who are full-time staff to do nothing but keep developing their leaders further. And then for the companies that I work with now, they're spending money at a very high level for me to work with the top people in the company. Never stop coaching them and providing them tools on how to get better. And what we focus on, it's the same model as in sports, collection of strengths. Every leader's got something they're strong at, that they're better than anybody else. How can we put them in a job that they can use that strength more every day? How can we coach them how to use that strength more? It's just like some people are faster runners, some are stronger. In the business world, same thing. So once you get in with an established firm, I'm not saying that's the only direction to go, but it's the safest route because they're big. They're likely going to continue. You can always leave and go to a smaller firm or start your own later, and you'll know so much more about how you're going to start that business later and whatnot. But you get into those big firms, if you show any interest at all, you'll get all the help to become a better leader as you can. In my case, the thing that I had to learn was my social skills. I'll say it nicely. They were terrible. It was just because I grew up in a small community. I was the star. Everybody was nice to me. I could act like a jerk and nobody'd even say anything to me because, I was a cool football player, right? And you get to college and again, you're not in an atmosphere where people are going to give you too much help there either. The coaches used to talk to me a little bit. I eventually worked my way to be captain, so it was okay. But then you get in the business world and your people skills have to be tremendously good. And I had to learn that. And it took me a lot of years to learn that it's just not black and white and smashing into people like you do on a football field. Sometimes you have to be gentle and all those sorts of things. For some athletes, that's a difficult task, and for others, it's not. But that's one of the few things as an athlete you have to watch out for. You're not in that same atmosphere where people are just working with you because you're so accomplished in your sport, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think, we talked a little bit before too about, I think, in part of the learning the social skills, a lot of it's about relationships. And I think so as they come out, I'm sure, a quick side question here about mentoring. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? And, have you been, had that on your start of your career, and then obviously, you're coaching, helping people today?
Yes, I did. It wasn't quite as organized as it is today. In established corporations that are doing things the proper way, there's the interviewing process. They decide to hire you. The next thing that happens when you walk in the door is they start an onboarding process, which is all laid out. That's why I say, don't worry about, am I going to fail or not? Can I cut it in this company or whatnot? They have support networks there. You might not make it in the end. Maybe it wasn't a good decision by them or you to get together. But if there's any chance you can make it, they're going to help you. And so there's a whole onboarding thing, which includes mentoring. In addition to your boss, the definition of a mentor is someone who is not your boss, but you can go to them with any question without any concerns or retribution. And companies do that. And again, in some cases, Advanced will use a coach like me, particularly someone I coach from experience, right? I'm coaching people, I've been in their job. Not that I've read it in a book how they do it, but I've been in their job. But they provide that kind of stuff to make sure you're successful, because then they make more money. It's at that point, we all make money if the business makes money, right? So.
Yeah, no doubt. And the better the team is, the better results, obviously. So I think it's so we encourage, like Jim's saying there, and myself as well, just, find mentors. And especially I think that's where it kind of turns back into the alumni world a little bit, that, whether it's your college, whether it's a sport, a team that you're with, or some type of organization, definitely reach out. And, people are willing to help. That's the bottom line. And I think if you're open to that, it could definitely shape you. So now I always talk about kind of that commercial. So talk about some of the things you're doing today. So you kind of parlayed your successful CEO career, and you're doing public speaking, and you've got your company now. Talk about your company, some of the things that you're doing, and how you can help.
Okay, great. So first, real quick, where I left from then, these were large publicly traded companies that I work for, which means I have a lot of shareholders, businesses all over the world, and that sort of thing. And then at a point, I'd reached the top, which was my goal, and done it long enough. I decided, and I was way past my point of financial freedom, so I could do anything I wanted. And I decided that I wanted to be a coach of people that do this kind of stuff for the enjoyment. So I had to start my own company, and never had any experience doing that. No one in my family had ever owned their own business, so I didn't know anything about it. But just like you said, there are mentors out there. There were people that I started asking around, and you have to know how to account your money, and you have to have lawyers help set it up. People available that some do it for a fee, some just do it to help people. Talk to someone who's been successful starting their own business. Again, it's not that difficult. It's a little more lonely route, but you can get it.
Yeah, no, I'm living it right now. So what are some of the things that you do with your company today?
So I try to behave like I'm retired and not do too much anymore, and just enjoy life. But actually, the people that I work with, they're in positions that I've been in senior levels in companies, and they have different problems that they're struggling with, or sometimes they don't know what their problem is, and they just need a sounding board, a third party, that sort of thing, to give them advice. And it's really challenging because these are really smart people, so you have to kind of be on your game to stay with them, and that's what keeps my mind sharp and keeps me enjoying things. There's also, for those people that are interested way out there, there's boards of directors, which I serve on. Those, again, can be very, very rewarding from the standpoint of they usually meet quarterly, and you come together and talk about the most important things going on in the company, and they're hoping the board can give them advice and that sort of thing. So that's what I've evolved to. There's maybe to conclude, someone said to me this a long time ago, and I urge this on to everybody else to think about this too. In your career, there are 3 phases. And in the first phase, you learn and learn like crazy. When you're playing sports, you learn, and you learn so much more than the sport and all that. And you learn the social life at college and everything else goes on. So there's the learn phase. And if you get that right, then comes the earn phase. And you hopefully make a lot of money. And most cases you make, if you've learned well, you're going to make more money than you thought you would. And that's the earn phase. And then the last phase is the return phase. That's the pay it forward. That's what you're doing, Rob. That's that phase. That's where I'm at now. And every one of those is an adventure and very rewarding.
That's great. So this has been really enjoyable. So how do people find you?
Well, I'm trying to hide, but you can find me easy. Just Cederna International. You can Google that. Is probably the best way to get in touch with me. And I always make this mistake, but if someone who's listening to this has a question that they just want a square answer to, I'm easy to find.
That's great. And I think people need to take more advantage of this. I mean, you brought up a lot of great things about, I think the key here, takeaway, is just the whole mindset and the leadership skills and all that developed as an athlete, and just how you parlayed that into a very successful career. And then, like you said, just kind of paying it forward and giving it back, and which is very rewarding as well. So you can find us on alumnidirect.com. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, all those. And then the show can be found on all the various podcast networks, as well as YouTube. So this was great. Thank you so much, Jim. We really appreciate your time today.
Rob, I enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.